Okay, so today I am going to be installing the new IPS version 3 kit. This is with the TV out, so you're using this custom made cable that actually plugs in right into the extension port. The only downside, I guess, is you will not be able to use the extension port for any other accessories that are originally intended, to be used for. But other than that, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to be putting it in this new shell that I got here, and it does need to be trimmed. So the opening needs to be wider on all edges, and also gotta trim down these raised sections here, so it's along the bottom and on the side here. And also actually have to cut the back of the start and select buttons, because this will be where the LCD lays, and the ribbon cable from the LCD will be over here, so it needs to lay flush in there, and this is basically in the way, so it needs to be cut out, and it doesn't ruin the integrity. So I'm going to use the Dremel to kind of file down the raised section along the bottom here and on the side. And you can actually use an X-Acto knife, but this is just a little bit faster and easier. So I'm going to file that down, and I'll use an X-Acto knife to actually make the screen a little bigger. Okay, now I normally touch down or touch up this little section here as well. So basically the left side here, whichever you look at it, just kind of go along the edge here and file it down just a bit, because the screen actually sits flush against it, which kind of makes the screen sit a little too much to the right. So if you want a perfectly centered screen, then just file down this section here a little bit. That way the screen can move a little bit more. It's ever so slightly, but if you pay attention to how the screen is, and if you want it perfectly centered, then I would go ahead and do that as well. Okay, so with everything filed down, I want to go ahead and cut out the section here by the select and start button. So just cut the back out, that way the LCD can sit in here. And also just gonna touch it up here with the X-Acto knife, and I'm gonna also go ahead and cut the screen out a little bit for the IPS LCD. Okay, so to make the opening a bit bigger for the IPS LCD, I usually use an X-Acto knife, and you just score the plastic on all sides a few times. So just go over 3-4 times on each side. So basically score the plastic, and then what I do is just cut the edges here, just cut in, so on all 4 sides. And then what I would do is just take some pliers, and you can just work your way in, and it'll just crack right off. As easy as that. You can use a Dremel, but if you don't want the plastic pieces flying everywhere, this works nice as well. Nice and clean. And good results as well. So, and you can always come back and touch it up a bit more. The way I like to do is actually take the lens cover, put it on here, and see where the opening of the lens is. You just put it to the light. So what you do, the way I do it, is put the lens in. You don't take the tape off the back of the lens. You just basically use it as a reference. If you put it to the light, you're going to be able to see where the actual opening of the lens is. So where the black is here, it's gonna shine through, and then you're gonna be able to see it. You can also see where the 3M tape is at, the edges here. So if it doesn't, if the plastic doesn't overlap that, you should be fine. Okay, so with all that cut out, I'm going to go ahead and put on the screen adhesive. Now, you want to leave the top on, just the bottom here, to be able to put it on the shell here. Because the top for the screen, you're going to take that off later, because you still need to kind of test fit the screen. Make sure you don't need any more fine adjustments of trimming the shell here. So just put that in, make sure it's nice and flush on all the edges, and it's not showing too much along here. So it's showing a little bit here, but that's fine. I'll probably just cut the shell a little down, a little too much here. But again, we'll put the screen in and we'll see. If anything needs to be trimmed, we'll take the knife and go over it a little bit more. Okay, so with that in, let's go ahead and start preparing the Game Boy. So I'm gonna go ahead and disassemble this one and get the board out. Okay, so with the board out, let's go ahead and start preparing the driver board here. Let's solder on all the required wires and test the screen, make sure everything is working properly. Okay, so let's go ahead and put in the 32 pin flex cable here. I'm gonna be pretty careful. These cables are pretty gentle, so don't apply too much pressure on them. Now the driver board actually goes in upside down here because it will be flipped up once the flex cable goes underneath here, and it will connect like this. So you want to have the LCD going to be connecting to this connector here. Okay, so let's go ahead and connect that in here. Let's flip the side first and put it in there, and put the flap down, and we should be good. Okay, so now I will go ahead and solder on wires for the left and right trigger, or the pads, and also gonna do the select button. And everything is laid out here, so you get the left, right, select, ground, and AV. And this will be for TV out that you'll be connecting to the extension port on the pins on the back. So for the left trigger, we're going to be connecting it to test point 8, so TP8, and for the right trigger, it's going to be test point 8, so TP8, right over here. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, let's apply a bit of flux. TP8 and TP9, left and right. I'm gonna go ahead and introduce a little bit of solder to it. And then let's go ahead and grab our wires. So this will be the left, which will be a TP8. And then we're gonna have our right, and that will be, well, this was TP8, this will be TP. Well, they're actually both TP8s. For some reason, I thought the right one is TP9. So they're both test point 8. Okay, now let's go ahead and do the select button. Alright, so for select, you're gonna be using TP2, test point 2. And actually looking, that is a 9. I don't know why. It's very hard to tell, but for some reason I thought it was an 8, so this isn't test point 9, test point 8. So I wasn't crazy. Alright, let's go ahead and add a little bit of solder here. Now let's go add solder to all of them. And we'll just put a bit of solder on all of them. Alright, add some here. So next will be select. TP2. Okay, so all we have left is the ground and AV out. Okay, so at this point, I just want to go ahead and connect the LCD and give it a quick test, make sure everything's working properly, and then we'll go ahead and connect the ground and AV to the extension port. So let's go ahead and connect the LCD, and then we'll give it a quick turn the fume extractor off. Push that in there, nice and gentle. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and give it some power and see what happens. All right, so I got the screen connected. I'm gonna give it some power. So we're at 3.3 volts. And let's go ahead and see what happens. All right, so here we have the brightness. This is actually the background color. And here, this one should be brightness. There we go. That's brightness. And this one is the background color. They are pretty sensitive, so you have to kind of keep it away from each other or they will be triggering each other. So brightness works good. Turn the screen up a little bit. All right, so everything is good. Let's go ahead and power this off. And we're gonna go ahead and solder on the ground and AV. Okay, so the ground, so it'll be in the back here. Let's go ahead and disconnect the LCD here. Okay, so we're gonna be connecting ground to this pin and then the AV cable to pin 1, which is on the right far side, bottom row. So let's go ahead and connect the cables on here. All right, so once all the wires are connected, let's just kind of go ahead and test fit everything inside the shell. Make sure everything's aligned and fits in here properly, and then we'll manage the wires neatly to make sure nothing is in the way. Okay, so everything seems pretty good. So let's go ahead and put these spacers in. So this kit actually comes with these brackets or spacers that go along the bottom here and on the side, and this will actually center the screen, make sure it's perfectly centered, and it will keep it in place. So let's go ahead and put that in. Okay, so before we go ahead and do that, we actually need to remove this paper off the tape here. That will keep the screen in place, the 3M adhesive. So we'll take that off. And there's also a protective film on the LCD itself. Now be really gentle with these. These are super thin and really fragile. So luckily only broke one so far, but it was kind of my mistake. I put it on there and I tried to pry it back up and it just cracked it right in half. Let's go ahead and take this film off. Now keep this film, because what I like to do is I'll take it off, and once I put the LCD on here, I'm actually going to take the film and put it up in the front here to keep from dust from getting on the screen before I'll put on the glass lens. But before I do that, I just want to make sure the screen is aligned. So once I glued it on here, I'll connect the board here and check it. Just kind of go over it, put the lens in, and we'll go from there. Put that on there. Come on. Sometimes it gets jammed in there. All right. Make sure all the dust gets on there. Take that off. Put it to the side. And then when the screen goes in here, it's supposed to be flush against this corner, up and flush in there as much as you can. So I'll just go ahead and put one side down first, and then we'll go ahead and put this in. I don't apply too much pressure, that way you can still kind of move it a little bit once you're putting in this spacers here. So we got the side one, and put this on the side. Sometimes they are a bit tricky to get in there. All right, finally got it in there. Took a little time, but you just want to be really gentle with it. You know, don't pry it in. Don't put too much force on it. Like I said, these LCDs are really fragile and they'll break really quickly under any pressure. So just be gentle, take your time, and you'll get it in there. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab our glass lens here. Remove the tape. And then let's go ahead and remove the lens here on the back, or the protective paper film. Take that off here. Make sure there's no dust on the lens. And gently put it on there. So I'm not gonna make sure that there's no dust on there. It looks pretty darn good. Nice and clean, no dust. All right. So put this back on here, and then we'll set the screen or the LCD firmly in there. I just like to keep it as clean as possible. Okay, so first I'm gonna go ahead and connect these touch centers, and they're gonna be going right on the bottom here. So they do come with adhesive, so you just peel this off and it will stick right on to the body like this on the side. Okay, with the sensors in, let's go ahead and start fitting the body in. Now, before we do that, what I usually do is cut a little notch right over here in this little plastic section here, because you're gonna have the wires coming in from the board from here, and the board sits flush on here, so you don't want to squish the wires. So I usually cut a little V-notch in here and they lay right in there. So one in here, and I also do one right in this corner, because you're gonna have these wires coming in from the left and the right trigger, and from the select button, and they will be coming underneath the board and onto here. So that way you don't cut any wires once you put the board in and screw it in. So one over there, and we'll do one over here as well. It doesn't need to be big, just enough to fit these wires. They are small, so all right. So let me go ahead and show you what I mean. So I'll just gently put it in here for now. See, when these wires come from behind here and they go underneath the board, so when you cut the little notch in, they will just lay nice and flat in there. So one there, and then over there as well. So once you put the board in, just kind of guide them in there and make sure that they aren't squashed by the board, because the board lays flat in there and you don't want to crush the wires, which will or can create a short circuit, and you could damage your system. But before I start closing it up, I still need to put in the buttons and the membranes. Now, they do come with new buttons and the rubber membranes, but I actually like to use the original, because these feel much better and are slightly higher than what they give you as a replacement. So the buttons, I will use the new ones, but the membranes, I'm gonna go ahead and clean them up and use the old ones. Now, before I go ahead and close it up and put the screws in, just want to go ahead and add this foam padding. This goes between the main board and the driver board. Just push it right underneath there. That just keeps everything nice and secure. Alright, and now we're ready to go ahead and put in the screws. So all the wires are nice and tucked in there. Like I said, the little notch, as you see, the wires go in nicely here and over here. So let's go ahead and put in the screws. All right, with the board in, let's go ahead and put the shoulder buttons on. So we got the left and the right one. And that's in. Now if they aren't springing back up really good, what you do, you can bend this metal back just a little bit. That way they're gonna spring up a lot more when you're pressing them down. There we go. It's got springy and it pops right up whenever you push it down. All right, let's go ahead and put in the bumpers. And I could figure out which one goes where. Come on. There we go. All right, and we're ready to put on the cover. All right, now we have a fully assembled Game Boy. Let's go ahead and put some batteries in and power it on. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and change the colors here and the brightness on the bottom right side. Now you could also use select and then left shoulder and right shoulder. Now the background color, I guess, is only usable if you're playing the Game Boy original games, but for all the other colors I don't really see a use for it, but it's a cool option to have. Now let's go ahead and test out the TV out option. Okay, so I went ahead and plugged in the extension cable and the headphone jack cable. So let's go ahead and power it on. Let's go ahead to the original color here. And to activate the TV out, you hold select left and right for about 5 seconds. And that should show up on the screen. Here we go. So let's go ahead and mess around with it a little bit. And of course, you know, the image is a bit stretched, but if you want to play some games on a big screen, this is awesome. Audio, actually, I don't have it plugged in here. All right, so it works good. All right, so let's go ahead and I'm gonna put the sticker in the back here and I will be all done with this one. Now this is a cool unit, actually. And when I bought it, I did not know, but check this out. That's pretty darn cool. It's a glow-in-the-dark shell. To my surprise, actually, I put it down on my table, turned the lights off, and I see this thing glowing. I was like, what in the world is going on here? But that is super cool. I'm not sure how long it lasts, but I'm sure it'll be glowing for at least a few minutes. All right, so let's go ahead and finish it back up. Let's make sure it's nice and aligned here. Let's put the bottom in first. It's not perfect, but looks good. All right, let's put on the battery cover. All right, and our game was all complete. I usually leave on the plastic film here because I don't want the screen to get any dust or any fingerprints on the lens, so I'll leave that up to whoever's gonna buy this thing. So all right, thank you for watching, and I'll start another project next.